Well, my presentation is going to be very different than the ones you have seen so far. And if I may dare to challenge you all today, and you may not like what I say, but yet I am going to challenge everyone, and it's just a different perspective on how you are handling your submissions. Would love to just raise of hands, how many of you are in the regulatory role? Okay, majority of the room, fantastic. And how many of you are using a RIM platform or some technology? Very few, okay. Well then, this will be a good conversation. Want to start off with just this plain, simple statement. Complexity in regulatory compliance is increasing truly at a record pace. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be having these conferences. It's getting more and more complex, and I know there are talks about harmonization that hasn't happened yet, but hopefully in the future it happens. But till then, I want to mention this phrase, which is a quote that says, "Simplicity does not precede complexity, but follows it." I really like this because if you think about it, that's exactly how things happen. Things are complex, and we have to make them simple. It's not the other way around. Things don't start off with simplicity. And yes, we can make things complex as well, but you have to take complexity and try to simplify it, and the only way you can simplify it is to change, and if you resist change, you're not going to simplify things and you're not going to move forward. Has anyone read the book Who Moved My Cheese? We get a lot of hands raises when we present this in the US. It's more common there. So let me share a story about this book called Who Moved My Cheese. It's about 4 little mice, and the names are Hem and Haw, and then there's Sniff and Scurry. So these 4 little mice have different personalities. Hem, as you can see from the picture, resistant to change, fears change, does not like change, and does not want to adapt to change. And then you have Haw, who also does not like change. Let's be honest, nobody likes change, but Haws at least start to learn and adapt to change, and sooner or later they will follow the bandwagon of the change. And then you have Sniff, who can sniff the change and they rush to move forward to the change. And then Scurries are your what we call early adopters in the tech world, and we love the Scurries. So the story goes like this. 4 little mice, Hem, Haw, Sniff, and Scurry. They live in a little maze, and their job is nothing but to eat cheese and live in the maze. So there is a corner in the maze where all 4 of them simultaneously find cheese. They go and eat cheese, and that's how their day goes. And every day they go to the same corner because there's cheese. They're fed, they're happy. And then because all 4 of them are going to feed on that cheese, the cheese supply starts to deplete. Now Sniff understands there's a change. He knows that this cheese is going to run out soon. I better go find cheese, another supply of the cheese, another place in the maze. And he scurries off and he does that. And sooner or later, Sniff also starts to sniff that, wait a minute, the cheese is depleting. And one day we may not have cheese in this room. And he also runs off to find cheese in another part of the maze. Now, Hem and Haw, they're there. In fact, they become lazy because they're resisting change. They're not even seeing, I guess they just are resisting the fact that the cheese might deplete. And then one day, the cheese actually depletes and they run out of cheese. And Haw looks at Hem and says, come on, Hem, we're running out of cheese and there's hardly any cheese left. We need to go find cheese like Sniff and Scurry. And Hem says, no, don't worry. Nothing will happen. Watch, next day, tomorrow when we come back, there will be cheese. And day goes on, and Haw's really trying to push Hem along, but Hem resists change and he never leaves that corner because he's expecting more cheese to just get replenished. Haw leaves, finds another place for the cheese, and that's how the story goes. Now keep these characters in mind. So let's talk about some of the challenges. What I'm presenting here is not rocket science. You all know this. changes, regulatory requirements are being updated, it's evolving, it's hard to keep up with. Just as an exercise, I went to our system in April and I sat there and I counted all the changes that our system captured for the month of April, and I saw there were 80 updates in April. And I had this light bulb moment because prior to doing this activity, I was at another conference where I was in your place and I was sitting there listening to a panel talk about regulatory intelligence and how they get updates and how they manage Reg Intel in their prospective companies. And I was astonished to hear this is their process, which is they have regulatory intelligence teams, and no offense to the Reg Intel teams here in the room, but the Reg Intel team subscribes to all these newsletters across the globe, and then they try to find all these sources. Then somebody has to sift through all that news that you're receiving, and then you aggregate that information in a form of a report, and then monthly, sometimes it takes more than a month to then disseminate that information. No problem with that, but then the question is, are they really capturing all the 80 alerts? I mean, can we do things a smarter way? It's really hard to keep up. I mean, one of the reasons that why companies approach us is also for Reg Intel, and they'll say, we can't keep up with it. And now with authorities coming and asking, well, do you know what changes it has impacted and what products your changes are impacting? Have you performed the gap assessment? I mean, there's the whole slew of other activities that you have to perform outside of just keeping up to date with Reg Intel. So the old way I just shared with you in how you gather your Reg Intel, you aggregate, disseminate, and the challenges are it's resource heavy. First of all, you have multiple people on that Reg Intel team that could be tasked in doing other more strategic work. And yes, you need the Reg Intel team absolutely, because you need for them to be part of a lot of these groups and lobbying and advocacy groups as well. But then there are manual errors, because when there's human interaction, they happens to be errors, and same with machines as well. But the level of errors is higher, and then you are also exposing your businesses to compliance risk. We know of clients who came to us with a lot of pink slips from the FDA itself. We know of companies that are in consent decree over Reg Intel, and how Reg Intel led to that consent decree. So we all know those stories. And interestingly, the fact is that non-compliance can cost a company, research shows, up to 5% of the revenue, and I don't think we even look at it that way. As I said, I'm standing here today challenging you and your current approaches, and if that's your approach, I shall challenge it to say, why can't you do it in a much more automated and simplified way? What if every single day the machine learning and just, the algorithms can just capture those changes for you? Wouldn't that be better? And every day your team would have daily updates rather than waiting for a month plus to receive those updates. And what if you had access to regulatory requirements without having to dig through the websites? And can you imagine? And I don't think leaders even have the time to sit and measure how much time their regulatory associates are spending in resource library. RegDesk has a resource library, and I'll tell you, we don't update that, the free library, because we have to update and keep our Reg Intel updated. And I mean, so you're leveraging resources that are outdated. So what if you had a better, more systematic way? That way you can make informed decisions faster. Let's talk about another challenge, pressure to accelerate registrations. I'll skip the poll. Now, preparing international submissions is daunting. It just is. Actually, that was one of the reasons why I was encouraged to start RegDesk. We saw that companies are constantly struggling with international submissions. You're always comfortable in your country of origin. You know those regulations inside out. But now when you have to go to these tertiary, secondary markets, how do you know what the format is? How do you know what the regulations are? And teams are relying heavily on their distributors. And the whole thing with distributors is another aspect which is unaccounted for, and how much time is wasted, because you sit there, you ask the distributor what's required, you wait for them to give them their checklist of requirements, then you have to figure out a way to share those documents with them because you can't give them access to your QMS or your DMS systems. And then they come back 3-4 months later complaining about how they're missing a document, or something's missing, or your DOC is not signed properly, whatever that may be. And next thing you know, months have gone by and you've barely made any progress in that country for that one particular submission. And most of you are from large organizations here, and you can imagine when you compound that effect among just in terms of how many submissions and products you have to do, it becomes a nuisance. There are two pathways. You can either do submissions yourself, or you can hire, obviously consultants help too, but you can engage your distributors for your submissions. We have done surveys. We do this day in, day out, talk to clients, and our survey shows, this is the data we have found, that with submissions specifically, there's a lot of document shuffling. There's that rework and redundancy. In fact, we have seen business cases made by leaders within the organizations to get a system in place, and one of their biggest their line item is rework, redundancy of effort. Leaders want their teams to not have to put in that effort. So what we found from our research is the average time to address a single distributor inquiry typically takes clients 6 to 8 weeks, and this is on the lower end. And again, try to compound this effect. So if you're just one inquiry, 6 to 8 weeks, and if you have dozens of inquiries, your team's wasting way too much time. Average time to prepare submissions, again, this is on the lower end, 2 to 6 months. We find that it usually takes teams much longer to build these submissions and prepare them. A single RA associate from our research and data shows that max 4 applications per year. That's you doing it independently. This is not you supporting distributors with data or documents. Teams and leaders are also complaining about increasingly more difficult to retain talent because RA teams are tired, international teams specifically, because they find themselves just working for the distributors, because all you're doing is just supporting international submissions. You don't have your own intel. You cannot have intelligent conversations with the distributor because they have the power, they hold the intel, they hold the knowledge, and all you can do is react to them constantly. RA teams are lacking, to my point, this knowledge and this confidence when preparing submissions. And then the loss of knowledge. It was interesting, some of the feedback we received, even with MDR remediation, when companies engaged consulting companies and outsourced it to India and all, which was great, but then a lot of that knowledge is also left with a team in India, and now their teams internally are struggling. And frustrating managing distributors. I think that's like a whole black hole I just talked about. You feed them information, data, time goes by, and then next thing you know, you have no idea where your submissions are, and they're not giving you updates. They don't have to give you updates, and so the power is in their hands. And again, I challenge you, if that's your process, is that how you want to be and continue with that, or can you do it in a smarter way? What if you had a smarter way to build your submissions? You do it once, or you upload the document once in the system, and it automatically pulls it into all the locations and submissions that it needs to. Or you build submission once, and the AI learns the content, and it can auto-generate and auto-populate your submissions. What if you had more automated workflows where instead of having these paper-based forms that somebody fills out and then somebody needs to check, what if there was a better way that everything's digitized in one system? And can we work smarter and in a much more integrated, intelligent way and digitized platform in its correct way? So I shared the data that we had. Let's talk about what Gartner's saying. Now, Gartner is well reputed. They've been doing research. They have a lot of plethora of research, especially on the pharma side. And this is based on their pharma data, because on the MedTech side, as we all know, most companies don't even have a system or digitization in place for regulatory. Now, what they show is that most pharma companies have a RIM solution, and they have found that pharma companies have greatly benefited from having a RIM platform. What they consider is what Gartner calls it a holistic RIM. And holistic RIM, per their definition, is a platform that can manage your documentation. It's not a DMS necessarily. It has Reg Intel. It can manage and prepare your dossiers. It can do all of most of your regulatory functions. But then it also integrates with maybe your clinical side, your PLM systems, your DMS and EQMS systems. And when you have that, you have one powerful tool. I love this because this truly defines and what the message I'm trying to relate to you today is what they're showing Gartner again is on the y-axis it's enterprise value, on the x-axis it's your global scalability. What they're saying is that in order for you to get the highest enterprise value and the largest scalability, you need to be on the holistic RIM side. So if you have a tool that's just content repository or a maybe in-house tool, then again, I dare to stand here and tell you, are you being a hem? Are you just resisting the change because you think you might be getting enterprise value from it, but you most likely are not? Some companies will say, well, we have a tracking module, or we have one-off Reg Intel module. Well, that too, you don't have that holistic, you don't have one digitized operational system. You're just looking at, and most RIM solutions tend to be glorified tracking systems, especially on the MedTech side. And you have to think beyond that because the data shows that you need to look beyond one-off components and systems. And you need to look at a platform that can do multitude of things through one platform, singular platform. I must address this because we get this asked a lot. How do I select a RIM platform? What we suggest, and I can't emphasize the first one, is user requirements. Draft your user requirements, know exactly what you need, what your must-haves are, that if the system didn't have those user requirements in place then or functionality in place, that it's a no-go. Make sure it's a holistic system. Last thing you want is a tracking tool, a separate submission management, you have a PLM, you have a DMS, and now you're trying to make it holistic. It's never holistic because most systems are not talking to each other. Your Reg Intel is just standalone. You can't create workflows from it. And different users have different access to different systems. You cannot get that enterprise value if you have too many disparate systems. Having integrated Reg Intel is highly beneficial. I know you may not have this if you already have a RIM, but it just does wonders for teams because the same team has access to Reg Intel. You're empowering your entire global regulatory team. You can't think of it just from the aspect of your teams, your office. You're trying to pull in all your regulatory operations in one system. Your distributors should be communicating with you through the same system as your reg teams are, and you can have different levels of restricted access, but this is what you should ideally look for. Workflows, you do not want a system that says, our system can only perform these functions, and by the way, the rest of the functions, that's your problem, you figure it out. That should be a red sign for you because you want a system that has maximum number of workflows, or at least they can customize and build and configure workflows for you. That way, when you say software means you're digitizing. When you're digitizing, it should be in its true form digitization. Collaboration with external partners, like I said, distributors and whoever your channel partners should be able to communicate through that platform, have access to that platform as well. And then the most important, the last bit is also highly important, that you cannot have a holistic RIM if it doesn't talk and connect with your DMS, because wherever your documents reside, RIMs are not supposed to replace your document management system, so you want a system that integrates well, and your document management system can be your source of truth for documents, and it just pulls documents as needed. I think I have to say this, that RIM platforms, if not yet, you will realize that they are akin to having a CRM for for regulatory. So as you know, salespeople, even for startups, the first thing you do in sales is get a CRM, because how do you operate? How do you manage all the sales, your leads and prospects? You can't without our CRM. It's going to be the same. Now you can be you can pick and choose which mice are you, but the point is that RIMs it's the future. You can resist it for how long? It would be my question to you, but it's going to happen because it will the benefits of it outweigh anything else. You know, it's truly is an investment for companies. There's a lot of research data already proving that point. A good RIM will actually help you comply with global regulations. It reduces your risk. It improves your data quality. It improves the way you collaborate with people and your teams. You'll be able to track registrations and increase visibility. That's a big also deficit of not having a system is there's really no visibility. We once had a client where prior to using our system, they had every regional team had their own system and their own Excel sheet version. In fact, the worst problem for them was that each regional team was inputting data in their own Excel sheets in the local language. And when UTMed requirement came about, the corporate office freaked out and they said, wait a minute, we can't operate this way. We need one Excel sheet, at least one massive template. And now they've gone from that, creating one massive template, and the amount of hours spent in translating that data into English, et cetera. You don't want to be in that situation. You want that increased visibility. You want that from the get-go. So I leave today with this one thought: who would you rather be, the hem, haw, sniff, or scurry? Thank you, everyone.
Do we have any questions for Priya?
If not, we have a booth, happy to address questions there. And also, if any of you are interested in how the AI works, at least we can demo how we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Priya.